As somebody who reads and writes and talks and does more videos about this enormous level of black criminality in this country, how it's wildly out of proportion, how so many people are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. These are people who, reporters, public officials, people who own newspapers. I mean, every day, I look at least one story and I say, that's the worst story I've ever heard in my life. Maybe it's the worst because of the level of violence or the level of hostility or the level of denial, deceit, and delusion or some combination of the above. Every day we get that. Today's nomination for the worst damn story I've ever heard in my life comes from the Philadelphia Inquirer/Daily News. They've done such a good job on reporting all the news in their town that for the last 10 years they've been in one constant state of laying people off, reducing the size of their paper, combining their paper, and reducing expenses one over another. Even so, the people who run the paper, they're doubling down on all the denial, deceit, and delusion that they're a part of. That includes the people who run the paper, people who includes the editorial pages, people who include what kind of editorials and op-eds we're going to run in Philadelphia in our paper to help people get a broader understanding of what their town is like. Check out the headline on this story. Dismantling the barrier between Asians and African Americans in Philadelphia. This is written by a professor at Swarthmore. Swarthmore is the kind of college you go to if you think Holy Cross and all these other small liberal arts schools aren't liberal enough for you. So anyway, when I see these stories, I try to at least give them a chance. Say, well, maybe one snuck in there by chance. Maybe this is actually a story at the enormous level of hostility, abuse, and violence that Asian people have been the victims of at the hands of black people for many, many years. Maybe it'll be that story. After all, it is written by an Asian woman. No, it was not. This is a story how Asian people since 1860 have been victimizing black people. 1860, they did something after the Civil War. In 1830, they did something with housing. And today, they did something worse than all. And who could blame black people for this enormous amount of violence, hostility, murder, and robbery directed at Asian people every damn day? Not one mention of that. Not one mention of the enormous amount of black on Asian violence and hostility all over the country. This is something we've documented more than anybody else. One of the biggest stories about black on Asian violence that I remember seeing, I put it in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, happened up in Rochester, New York. Started about 10 years ago and went on for 7 or 8 years, till finally a couple years ago, the newspaper in Rochester came out and said, hey, and this is like a big story in Rochester. The beginning of the tone of the story was, hey, we invited a lot of Asian people here from Nepal and Burma to be refugees and to settle in Rochester because that's just how we roll. We're very nice people. But now after 5, 6, 7, 8 years, has anybody noticed that every single one of those people who got off the plane have been victims of violence, harassment, robbery, threats, harassment, and murder from day one? Has anybody noticed that? And they kind of, and in the story, they kind of just take a beat for a second or two. Then they look around and go, oh yeah, it was black people. And they spend a good chunk of the story apologizing for noticing that black people have been victimizing Asian people in Rochester for a long time. It's not just the immigrants either. It's at the Rochester Lilac Festival, large groups of black people rampage through the festival, causing all sorts of violence, mayhem, and chaos against people who go there for a good time, and the people who organize it. A Lots and lots of black violence at the Liberty Bell, where kids get on and off the bus to go to school, or at the new bus transfer station, where kids also get off the bus to school. Rochester is a center of black criminality and denial. After they did this story on while they were reporting the story on all the violence and harassment and even murder against Asian immigrants in Rochester, they started going around town. They went to one of these United Way anti-violence groups, parentheses, group run by a bunch of black people to blame white people for black hostility and violence. Anyway, they put a microphone in her face. They said, "Hey, what's up with all this black on Asian violence in Rochester?" The lady goes, "Well, this is the first I've ever heard of it." They go to a guy who was a police chief, just retired in Rochester 2 days before, a black guy. They go, "Hey, what's been going on your watch for like the last 10 years? We have all this black on Asian violence in Rochester. What's up with that?" He goes, "Oh, it's no big deal. Asians will learn what every other immigrant in America learned. They're going to learn how to take care of themselves when they move into these ghettos." This is like one of the first chapters in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. And as they reported these things, they just couldn't apologize enough for noticing that Asian people are victims of black violence, harassment, crime, robbery, and murder. And not just one-off things. Why don't we run across the country to the San Francisco Bay Area? A couple years ago, the San Francisco Bay Area, the cops did a study in San Francisco, and they looked at the last 500 street crimes, street robberies, strong-arm robberies, whatever you want to call them. 85% of them were black on Asian. The paper runs one story on it. San Francisco's dirty little secret. Black on Asian violence. They went and interviewed a bunch of Asian people at Asian social welfare agencies, and every single one of them go, "Oh yeah, that's no secret to us. It's been happening here a long time." Still is. Why don't we go not too far away, South Sacramento? We've done a dozen stories on this in the last year. Hundreds and hundreds of cases in South Sacramento, California, where black people are targeting Asians for violence, robbery, harassment, even murder. Lots and lots of it going on. They had a big meeting. They all follow the same script. There were about 500 Asian people in a room. And a lot of them stood up and told their story. How we are being robbed, how nobody cares, how the cops shrug their shoulders and go, "Hey, what are you going to do?" Then, of course, in this meeting, maybe one or two Asian people stood up and said, "We're angry. We're not really going to take this." Chief of police said the same thing. A city councilman, he gets up there, "Oh, no, not on our watch, people." Then it keeps happening. So you keep having the meetings. And after about the fifth meeting, finally you find one hipster city councilman willing to tell the truth. And he goes, "Well, it's just something that happens everywhere. It's just a thing. And we're just going to have to ask the Asian people to keep their head on a swivel, because everybody knows black people are victims of racism. And, well, these things happen." Why don't we go down to Los Angeles, California? We did a story about this as well, and Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Black people were targeting Asian people for crime and violence and robbery and murder. So a couple of people that went into the slammer when they were teenagers came out 2 years later in their early 20s. And they said, "Hey, what were you doing? Why'd you get sent to prison? Why were you targeting those Asian people?" And they go, "Hey, they're old, and they have money, and they don't fight back." And it was like a joke. This magical mystery tour could go on all day long. We've done a couple stories in the last few weeks in Durham. Typical story, a guy leaves his restaurant in Durham, goes home, some of the fellas follow him home, they kill him. Left behind 3 daughters and a wife that will absolutely never recover from this.
They say they've been the focus of multiple robberies over the past few years, a troubling trend other Asian American business owners are facing.
It's perceived that Asians have a cash-based business, they're unarmed, they're defenseless, and they may have language barriers where they can get help.
Cindy U. Robinson is a board member of North Carolina Asian Americans Together. She says targeted attacks have been an issue since 2014 throughout the area. This latest crime may force the permanent closure of this family-run restaurant.
I can't imagine how can I open that without my husband.
Ditto in Cleveland. Ladies standing in it. Ladies, very attractive young Asian ladies sitting in her car in Cleveland. I think she was just waiting to go in and get something, and she was kind of like getting her purse together and her phone together. All of a sudden, a bunch of black people opened the door and they beat her face in with brass knuckles. She's unrecognizable, even to herself. Every one of these episodes come along with these lame-ass excuses. Oh, they don't have anywhere to go. They don't have any money. Where are black people going to get their money? Asian people have a lot of stuff they don't like to share. So now we go back to Philadelphia. Beginning of this video where the lady with the commentary says, well, we got to get black people and Asian people together again. What she really means is we have to get Asian people to understand why they have been and will continue to be victims of relentless black hostility and violence. It was just about a year ago when it got so bad that a bunch of Chinese people had a protest in Philly. There were thousands of people in the protest saying things like, Dr. King wouldn't have liked this. Everybody's always so polite. The politeness now is getting you hurt. Just a few months ago, there's a city councilwoman in Philadelphia called Cindy Bass. She's one of the worst city councilwomen elected officials in America. She decided that Asian people that have these thick plexiglass screens inside of their stores to protect themselves from black hostility, anger, retribution, robbery, violence, and even murder. She said that's an insult to black people. It treats them like criminals. When in Philadelphia, every single Asian person who lives in Philadelphia knows that Asian people are constant threats to black violence because black people think that Asian people have a lot of money. They won't fight back. And is it my fault that they have money and I don't? No, that's their fault. They have some kind of special privilege. The woman in this college teacher even says so. Asian privilege.
Now, I think the plexiglass has to come down.
She wants to put some controls on these small stores that she says sell booze, very little food, and other source of trouble in her district.
We want to make sure that, that there isn't this sort of indignity, in my opinion, to serving food through a plexiglass only in certain neighborhoods.
And all of a sudden, this resentment, this hostility, this fairy tale of Asian privilege starts gathering and growing and festering. Next thing you know, Asian people are being killed, attacked, robbed, vandalized. All while Cindy Bass, the city councilman in Philadelphia, shrugs her shoulders and says, Asian people deserve it. This is a very long list. So now the question is just to the Asian people, when are you going to stop putting up with it? When are you going to stop voting for the Democratic enablers by the 65, 70, 75% margins? When are you going to figure out this is not normal? When are you going to stop worrying about all this criminality and hostility directed at you, and whether by speaking up against it, you'll be making the black kids angry?